in the bathroom. You're used to it anyway, my mother-in-law chuckled, lifting her wine glass as the guests at the long banquet table erupted in laughter. No one looked at me, not even my husband. He just shifted in his seat, pretending to pour more wine, pretending not to hear. I stood there holding a tray of appetizers. Yes, I had made them. Yes, I had funded the entire evening. And yet here I was, treated like some uninvited maid while they toasted to her birthday in my restaurant, under chandeliers I had paid for. I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just slowly placed the tray on the nearest table, turned around, and walked out into the night. The cold air slapped my cheeks like a wake-up call. I took out my phone, logged into the secure trading app, and transferred full liquidation of my holdings, all $150 million worth, from a company I had co-founded, the one that my husband's family had mocked until it became profitable, the one they were now profiting from. Then I made one more call. The banquet hall manager picked up on the first ring. "I'm the one paying for that event," I said quietly. "Cancel everything. Immediately." There was a pause. Then, "Yes, ma'am." Inside, the music still played. But soon, the silence would come. And none of them were ready for what I'd already begun. I didn't stay to watch the panic. I didn't need to. By the time I reached home, my phone had already begun vibrating nonstop. Calls from my husband, from his mother, from the hotel, from people who had laughed while I stood humiliated with a tray of appetizers, like a servant in my own success story. I placed the phone on silent, set it face down, and walked into the master suite. Everything in that apartment had been bought with my earnings, yet they acted like I was merely allowed to live there, as if I were the burden. That illusion ended tonight. I changed out of the black dress, the one she'd mocked me for wearing too modestly, and pulled on a cream silk robe. I lit a single candle in the center of the room and opened the drawer that contained the one thing I hadn't yet used. A letter, sealed in legal blue. It was my personal severance agreement from the company, my exit strategy, something I'd drafted months ago but never signed. Tonight I would, because I wasn't just pulling their financial rug, I was building a new stage. My name would be the only name on it. I signed slowly, and as the ink dried, I whispered to the quiet air. They laughed at me tonight in my restaurant under my lights with my money. I looked at my reflection in a mirror, eyes calm, but colder now. Let's see if they're still laughing by morning. The next morning, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the tense, unnatural quiet that always comes before a storm. When I finally checked my phone, I saw the messages had turned frantic. Missed calls, voicemails. But it was the last text from my husband that said it all. "What did you do?" "The payment bounced. The hotel wants to shut down the banquet." I replied with a single line. "Tell your mother I don't fund cruelty." Then I got dressed. Not for work, for war. A pale gold suit, the one she once called too flashy for a wife. I wore it anyway. I tied my hair in a low knot, controlled, composed, and walked out with a folder in my hand. At the lawyer's office, I delivered the signed documents myself. Shares were liquidated, and the trust fund I had set up for his family dissolved. They'd mocked me like I was disposable. Now they'd see what happens when the disposable one walks away, with the company in her pocket. Back home, my husband was pacing in the hallway, his shirt still half-buttoned from the chaos. He looked up, eyes wide. "They canceled everything. Even the guests are leaving." My mother's in shock. I didn't flinch. "She should eat in the bathroom. She's used to it, remember?" He stepped forward. "This is going too far." I held up the folder. "No. This is just the beginning." Behind him, I could see his mother sitting on the marble floor, dress crumpled, makeup ruined, eyes begging. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking at the woman in the mirror behind her, and for the first time in years, she looked free. I didn't attend the wedding, but I watched. From a distance. They'd moved the ceremony to a cramped banquet hall on the outskirts of town, one of those windowless places where even the flowers looked embarrassed to be there. I wore a black scarf and sat in a rental car parked across the street, engine idling. Not out of spite, out of observation. I wanted to see what they looked like without me. The groom's side barely filled 2 rows. Most of the guests had quietly pulled out after the hotel announcement went viral, courtesy of a single anonymous email titled, "Behind the Bride, a Family Funded by Lies." Her father kept adjusting his belt, sweat pouring through his rented sherwani. The mother, once so regal, now fanned herself with a discount brochure, makeup patchy from heat and regret. Even the caterers seemed disappointed, half the dishes missing, the servers sighing as they replaced silver trays with disposable foil. My husband stood near the mandip, eyes darting to every door like he was still expecting someone to show up and save it. No one came, not even his own sister. She'd apparently sided with me after seeing the photos I sent her, evidence of how her mother mocked my daughter's stammer, imitated it at family dinners while everyone laughed. That image was the final crack. And cracks are what bring houses down. When the priest asked if anyone objected, silence followed. Then a faint murmur. The groom's aunt, standing at the back, whispered just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Where's the real bride? The one who paid for this?" And suddenly, every head turned. But I was already gone. The scarf left behind on the windshield, fluttering like a goodbye from a woman they never truly knew. Only now they would. That night, their honeymoon flight was canceled. No explanation. Just a red screen at the airport kiosk. Transaction declined. Because that flight? Booked on my corporate card. So was the resort, the airport taxi, even the champagne they were supposed to pop in the lounge. I'd let them dream until the very last boarding call, then pulled the plug like a light switch in a dark room they'd known. They had nowhere to go. And worse, everyone watched. A family that once looked like royalty now stood humiliated in the arrivals terminal, surrounded by whispers, camera phones, and one airport security officer who said, "Ma'am, your payment's not going through again." My mother-in-law screamed. My husband just stared at the floor, clutching his suitcase like a broken promise. They eventually booked a cheap local motel using her emergency jewelry, the same jewelry I'd once gifted on Diwali when she told me I was finally behaving like a proper wife. I never forgot that line. Just saved it for the moment she'd forget who paid for the gold wrapped around her wrist. That night, I wasn't home. I was at the real family home, mine, with my daughter asleep beside me, her tiny hand curled into my scarf like it held the world. The TV played softly, and the lawyer's voice echoed from the laptop screen. "The trust transfer is complete. Your father's assets are now fully under your daughter's name." I didn't smile. I just blinked once. Silent. Still. Then clicked save. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about memory. About making sure my daughter never questioned her worth again. They tried to erase me from the wedding. But now, every document, every account, every locked door they once used to control me belonged to her. And the locks? I changed them all. By morning, the messages started. First from my husband. "Babe, I think there's a glitch. My card isn't working, can you check?" Then his mother. "Where's the gold set I left in your closet? That's family property." I didn't respond. Instead, I updated the bank alerts to send me every failed transaction in real time. Beep. Her salon visit declined. Beep. His attempt to withdraw $200 declined. Beep. Their wedding videographer payment failed. They were drowning in slow motion. And I was the tide. At noon, they returned to the house, or tried to. The key didn't work. He knocked. Then banged. Then yelled. I opened the door just enough for his eyes to meet mine. "You changed the locks?" he spat. I held up a tiny silver key. "No. I just made sure you never had one." He stepped forward. "You can't do this. This house is rented in my name, paid with my account, furnished with my savings," I said, voice calm but cold enough to burn. His mother appeared behind him, face flushed. "You selfish witch. What about family? What about honor?" I smiled faintly. "You mean the kind you sold for a wedding invite?" She raised her hand to slap me. But I didn't flinch. I just shut the door slowly, 1 inch at a time, until all that was left was silence. No screams. No apologies. Just the dull click of a door locking shut, this time for good. Inside, I sat down beside my daughter, placed her tiny pink shoes on her feet, and said softly, "Want to go see Dada's new house?" She giggled, because she already knew. We weren't just walking away. We were walking toward something they could never take back. That evening, I drove my daughter to my grandfather's old estate, a quiet stone house surrounded by silver pines. I still remembered the summers the first spent here, running barefoot through wild grass, listening to his stories by the fireplace. He'd passed years ago, but the deed? He left it in my name. Untouched. Forgotten. Until now. As we stepped through the creaking doors, my daughter whispered, "It smells like cinnamon." I smiled. "It smells like peace." Meanwhile, my husband and his mother were unraveling. They called, texted, emailed, threatened. Then came the apologies. I was stressed. I didn't mean any of it. "You're overreacting. You're hurting your own child. Come back. Let's talk." But I had already spoken. With silence. With locked doors. With canceled accounts and untraceable transfers. I wasn't punishing them. I was removing them. That night, I lit a fire in the stone hearth. My daughter fell asleep wrapped in a quilt older than I was. And I sat quietly with a photo in my hands, the last one I had of my grandfather. He always told me, "A woman raised in storms doesn't beg for shelter. She becomes the storm." At dawn, I received a call from the bank. Apparently, my husband had tried to remortgage the apartment under both our names, forgetting I'd already severed all ties. His loan was denied, his credit cards frozen, his accounts under audit, and the cherry on top, my final email sent at 6:01 a.m. to his mother. "Since you believe I'm just a wife, I'll no longer act like one. Your son's business now. Kindly vacate your position. Permanently." She never replied, but she didn't need to. Her silence was the sound of losing. They say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. It's best served quiet, in soft footsteps, in unsigned envelopes, in the way a door closes and never opens again. A week after everything crumbled, I sat at the new office I now owned, once his mother's domain, now stripped of her nameplate, her perfume, her pride. The staff welcomed me with cautious eyes. But I didn't need their applause. I needed peace. And peace came, not in waves, but in moments. In the morning sunlight hitting the oak desk. In the absence of screaming phones. In the stillness of a life finally mine. My daughter drew a picture in crayon that night, of us in a little house with trees and stars and a chimney. She handed it to me and said, "This one's forever, right?" I nodded, and for the first time in years, I meant it. Across town, my ex-husband moved into a cramped one-bedroom, with creditors circling like vultures. His mother? Gone silent. No more banquets. No more insults. No more laughter at my expense. I had taken nothing from them. I had simply returned everything. Returned the shame, the debt, the silence, the pain. But I had kept the dignity. And I had earned the freedom. One night, as snow fell gently outside our windows, I wrote one last letter. Not to them, not to anyone, but to myself. You survived what was meant to silence you. You turned humiliation into power. You didn't just walk away. You made walking away look like art. I folded it and placed it in a box labeled Keep. Because I will. I'll keep the lesson, the strength, the scars, the stillness. And I'll never again let anyone mistake my silence for